Good morning, everyone. It's Darren from Darvill's Domain Podcast, and I'm joined here with Ja-On Hillman. He's a Brandon local. He owns a reactive massage therapy here in Brandon. So what would you say you specialize in, Ja-On?
Well, that's kind of the big thing. We were just talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
What, as a small business, what do you say is for, when somebody asks, what do you do? And I just kind of really relate it to is, what's the biggest problem that you're dealing with? Are you dealing with some sort of functional pain, something that's giving you trouble? Great. We can work with that. In fact, this is the proof that I have on how I can help you.
Right.
And I find that's just kind of the best way to look at it. So when I talk to people, it's more along the lines of, well, okay, so why are you here? What's giving you trouble? Okay, so these are the biggest dominoes. Is that what you want to get rid of? Okay, let's knock those dominoes down. First of all, clear them off and see how you feel.
Yep.
And quite often in business, we forget about that and we start talking about all the stuff that we do and all the stuff that we have and all the stuff that we want to sell you.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Which is like the same thing, like you're essentially a problem solver, which
Correct.
is the same way we look at that in like our detailing business, right? So one of our biggest thing is you come in as a customer, you become a client, and then from there you become a friend, and then eventually, like we have a lot of clients that are like family to us, right? So we check in on them and stuff. And saying in that, like we're solving problems. So when they come in, it's like, hey, what's the issue? All my vehicle's really dirty. It's got heavy stains. It's got this. It's got that. Worried about germs and bacteria. Okay, this is exactly how we can eliminate those, right? So it's the same thing with you. When I come in and I'm like, hey, Ja-On, like my back's sore, my sciatic, this or that. You're like, hey, this is what we need to do. And then, we get everything all kind of dealt with and we discuss that. And I always leave with something, which is like something that I've taken from you and other people specifically, but where it's like, okay, so this is how you're going to keep your vehicle clean. This is how you're going to do this. And then for you, you're like, well, here's exercises, or here's this that you can do to change your life, like change your diet, change this, change that, right? So it's been huge for me, right? So,
and it's interesting that that's really the right process is, it's a value-based economy. How can you provide some value in a relationship to people and, make them feel like they're wanted?
Yeah.
As opposed to, what you see so much on social media nowadays is just, people are, just buy my shit.
Yeah.
Here's a post, buy my shit.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Yeah.
And it's like, why do I don't even know what your crap is. I don't want to buy it.
Yeah.
Give me a reason to buy it. Well, it's because it's cheap or it's new or whatever, right? And, we see that a lot with small businesses, one week that's talking about this product because it changed their life or whatever, product or service or whatever it might be, changed their life. Next week, it's, hey, this product changed my life. It's like, okay, so now my big question is, were you lying then or are you lying now?
Yeah.
Which is it?
Right.
What's the story behind this? Do you promote and recommend two different products or services? Did you give up on one? Was it not beneficial or what's the reason?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times small businesses really forget about that. There's a reason why you do certain things as opposed to just getting paid.
Just making money, right? And I think that's where a lot of people forget that, like, leading with your heart the way that we do. So we lead with our heart and we make sure that our integrity stands before like the actual money aspect of it. We're not trying to like, okay, we'll get them in and out as fast as possible. We just want to make money. So here's some lipstick for the pig, put some lipstick on the pig and kick it out into the barn, right? So we always make sure that like, hey, here's what you're truly paying for. It's a value inside of what we're offering you, right? And like you do that, I do that. I think a lot of the people we associate with seem to do that, right? Like
most seem to anyways. I mean, we can always do a little better. I mean, the value proposition is an interesting thing itself.
Yeah.
And it's, nowadays I guess it's always been like this. Everyone always, it's always the struggle on selling and promoting different products for the right reasons. And, how are you going to do it? How are you going to align to it? Right.
Right.
Which, that's sometimes half the battle. Yeah. So actually one of the things that I tend to use is it's called the LEAP method. Okay. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this to you or not.
I'm interested now. Yeah.
So LEAP stands for 4 components that you should always take a look at when you're aligning yourself to a product or a service or a business or a dream or vision or whatever it might be. Is it legal? Okay. Is it ethical? Does it align to your purposes? And is it profitable?
Okay. Fair,
which makes sense. If you can check base on all 4 of those, go for it. Give her. Right. But, a good example is, say cannabis, right? So everyone's talking cannabis, right? And I get so many companies and distributors and everything coming up and saying, you should sell cannabis in your store. Okay. And I'm like, well, sure, it's legal, Okay, it doesn't really align with what we want to do. Is it ethical? Yeah, it's still ethical and it'd be highly profitable, but it doesn't really check off all 4 of those boxes. So therefore, we just say, I'm sorry, it's not really what we want to do.
So what would be the purpose of somebody trying to sell cannabis inside your business? Would that be more for like the CBD aspect and
the CBD,
like to help with like pain and stuff like that?
Yeah, there are topical cannabis lotions that, especially down in the States, a lot of people are using in their practice, right?
Okay.
And which, it opens a whole can of worms as such, because like, as you know, it's still a scheduled drug or whatever its legal definition is now. I can't quite remember.
Right.
But so there's going to be legal implications on whether a professional can be using it. Right. And even if you're still okay with it and you do the right channels, if you're not wearing like gloves, for example, and you're applying onto a person's skin that way, technically you're dosing yourself.
Yeah, I guess,
Right.
So like, I know when we went down to Vegas, my hip was just bugging me, like so much walking, right? Like you've been to Vegas. So I went into, I think it was like a Walgreens, and they had this like CBD, which like I carry my card and stuff like that. So it was like a CBD rub. I'm like, oh, I'll try it. And I got it, and it was like a bomb. You like rub it on. It's got like the little roller. I rolled it on, and I'm like, shit, that actually kind of helped. But I think more than anything, it was like menthol or whatever. So it was like you put it on, and I think it just like more or less just relaxed the muscle around the joint, right? So
that's kind of a little bit of the concern I have with some of the stuff. Like, I don't think it's inherently bad. I think there's a lot of use behind them. But like you said, there's the menthol component.
Right.
And we are finding a lot of the older generation, like baby boomers and such, really love this topical CBD because it really works. It's like, well, is it the CBD? Or is it because, now it's kind of rebellion because you weren't allowed to back in the day? And is it the menthol that's making the difference? And it's a hard thing to tell which one is actually really making a difference.
Well, like the first thing I did was like, obviously I opened it. I'm like, well, I'll try it. I smelt it. I'm like, kind of smells like A535 or whatever, right? So I'm like, okay, well, I'll give it a swing. So like A535 has honestly never really worked for me. I've never found it to work, but like I did put it on. I'm like, hey, you know what? At the end of the day, this is helping in this very moment. So I don't really care what it has in it. I just want it to work, right? So
I mean, that's the big thing. You just want the results more than anything. And how much is the active ingredients in it? It's hard to say.
Right.
But I look at the price point of it, and it's cheap stuff.
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
Really cheap. So if the stuff that we're getting clinically, which doesn't have CBD, kind of costs more, you kind of have to wonder, like, okay, why is it so cheap?
Right. And this is something we were just talking about before, like off camera. It was like, what's the true value? Because sometimes we're seeing, like, for example, my fiance is a hairdresser, so they're selling a soap for whatever, say $45, but like a similar soap is a box store for 22. So then people are like, well, why wouldn't I just buy this? But it's like, maybe that's filled with like waxes and whatever, right? So it's the same thing when we're offering services. It's like, where's the real and true value in it? So okay, like maybe people that are in the same sector as us, they're offering like a similar service, but like, where's the real and true value? Do you know that you're eliminating germs and bacteria? Are they shining your dash and door panels with silicone-based products, or are they doing what we're doing and you're actually using like a conditioner product behind it? Same with like tint and paint protection foam, right? Like, are they using a actual reputable brand? And then same thing when it comes to coatings, right? Like, now you're seeing everything's ceramic based, everything's this, everything's that, and it's like, okay, but like ours is actually like hand applied, ceramic based, graphene based, like however it is. And we're making sure that like when we offer something, it's like a 5-year warranty, because like most people are keeping their vehicle for 5 years, 2 to 5, right? So we're making sure that the value is there because the warranty is actually uploaded to the Carfax, which is something you probably see too, right? So
that's cool.
Yeah, it's super important to us. So
well, that's kind of the problem when it comes to products and sales. It's not always an apples to apples; it's an apples to oranges in many regards. And the second you start commoditizing your product or service, it's a race to the bottom, and you're going to lose.
Very quickly.
Somebody can always do it cheaper, right? And we have to be really serious about things. A lot of times, price doesn't matter. Okay. Because we've all had people come in and be like, well, how much is your product, your service, or whatever? And they'll say, well, that's too much. That's too much. I can't afford it. And we've had that. People come in all the time too. Oh, it's just too much, or your product is too expensive. Okay. So I usually ask them, well, what should it cost? Right. And they usually can't give you an answer other than Well, it should just be less. It should just be cheaper.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're dealing with price point, which is a very logical thing. Okay.
Right.
Now, this is what it is. This is what it costs. But you're talking about emotional aspects because you feel it should be cheaper.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take the emotion out of it and just look at things from literally a business transaction. This is what it is. You know, there's certain reasons.
Yep.
You know, I'm not going to get teary-eyed if you don't buy it.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
Move on to the people that believe in it, or the people who believe in you, right? So
people go buy it and make bad decisions on their purchases all the time. You know,
yeah.
like how many people go through you would know this, have midlife crisis and buy whatever vehicle that they can't afford.
Right.
Right. Just because, you know what, I'm getting old, I've got to do this.
Is that a dig on my Cadillac?
Not at all. Not at all. It is a beautiful Cadillac. So it is a beautiful Cadillac.
The felt very replaced.
Maybe it's a dig against my bike. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then like you do some other stuff too, right? Where you don't really have to worry about, like, you have your daily hustle.
Yep.
And you help the clients, and like I know just over the last few years that we've known each other, you've kind of descaled so you could help a little bit longer with a few less people, right, in a day.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but you do other stuff too, right? Like you're pretty big on side hustles and having extra income streams and stuff like that. So
my book is coming out on it actually.
Oh yeah, okay.
So that's pretty neat. But yeah, like you help. You want to help.
Yeah.
Right. Isn't that the funny thing? If you talk to any 15, 16-year-old kid and you ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they'll give you an answer: nurse, doctor, or whatever. And they're good answers. Good answers. And you can ask why. Well, I want to help people. Okay, that's good. But you can make mini donuts. That's helping.
That's
still
filling a need,
people,
right?
Yeah. But it all comes down to the impacts, the ripples you can make. It's like casting a stone and watching the ripples move out. So you can toss a very small stone and have just one or two ripples, or you can make a bigger impact, and you're going to really make some big difference on people.
Right.
And as you're a small business person as well, you made it through COVID. Well, shit.
Yeah.
Didn't that teach us things, right?
Yeah, like a lot too.
And the big part was, you just, because you're a father too, you don't want to spend all your time at work. You want to want to enjoy your life. You want to enjoy the what you're getting out of your job.
Yeah,
or you want to raise your kids. You don't want to have the system raise your kids or something, right? The school divisions or whatever. You want to be that impact and that role model.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, after really trying to figure out what I want to talk about, it really came down to that old phrase from Tim Ferriss, right? Lifestyle design.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
From the old 4-Hour Work Week.
Yeah.
And a great book. And actually just going through it again, it reminds me how much it influenced my business and the startup and everything that led up to it and past.
Yep.
It was because I just didn't want to spend, 40, 50, 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
So how could I automate things?
Right. And
how could I start doing things online to reach a broader audience, to have digital products or digital services or drop shipping or virtual product distribution, so you can still make money without actually having to be talking to the person directly. Right.
Yep.
And I think that's really the dream, which is why, so much of online over COVID blew up with, direct sales or multi-level marketing.
Yep.
or affiliate marketing was the other big one. Coaching, that was a big one. Course huge. Development, all these things really picked up because they're scalable.
Right.
And that's the big thing. I mean, you guys are in a good position because you have the potential to scale, franchising or whatever it might be.
Right.
But you take a lot of the mom and pop stores or small businesses that are sitting around where they're just skirting the edge of profitability. The scalability isn't an option for them.
Right.
And unfortunately they kind of go, well, we'll bring in another product. We'll bring in another product. And now you start creating a lot more work for the sake of work.
Well, and then those products all cost money and
they melt. They melt away essentially.
Yeah. The one thing I wasn't expecting throughout COVID was COVID was pretty mentally daunting. Cheryl was off work. And for yourself, your main revenue stream was closed, and I'm looking around and I'm waiting for our day, and we were chatting and stuff, and we were thankful to stay open. But what we weren't expecting was the after COVID effect.
Okay.
So the after COVID effect was during COVID was hey, this is the realization. I want my car clean. I want it protected. I want this protected, blah, blah, blah. All right. So it was people are willing to spend some money. The after COVID effect became, that doesn't matter to me anymore.
Yeah.
I need to hang on to this, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So, and we honestly, we weren't really expecting that. The whole car industry kind of started to plummet. We were having a harder time getting vehicles. I'm like, okay, well, this might be good for us, because now people are gonna be like, all right, so I just got this brand new vehicle. I'm not gonna be able to get a new one because like they're so backed up as it is.
Yeah.
So the realization is that I used to be 2 to 5 years in this. I'm going to be 5 to 7 now. And that realization is there, but the actual protecting it and taking care of it. But the thing that we're noticing, so like paint protection film, you're not from this industry, but paint protection film is typically 5 to 6 mil thick.
Okay.
What we're noticing now is a lot of these really high-end cars are, for one thing, you can't get like a family vehicle for under $100,000 these days. Like they're close to, right? Yeah. So, but what we're noticing is a lot of the paint is actually like anywhere from like 2.1 to 3.1 mil thick, which is actually even thinner than a Post-it note.
That's crazy.
So more important now than ever is protecting your vehicle, but everybody like kind of went into this phase where they wanted to like hang on to their income, which, and I totally understand because we were the same.
Yep.
But now, thankfully, now we're kind of past that 1 year and people are starting to kind of see what it's doing and stuff like that. So now people they're thinking about it differently. Like if I spend a little bit more on this product, my vehicle will last this much longer, and we're getting there. But yeah, we had like a really weird effect with COVID where it was like COVID was okay. And then like the after COVID, which is something I never thought about. Okay. Right. So it was different.
You know, we've had a similar thing. You know, last year was probably their busiest year for a business. Okay. Right. Yeah. And I'm looking at the numbers going, wow, where did the money go?
Right.
Right. Yeah. Because part of the other after effect we didn't expect naturally was the rising costs of everything else. Right. Right. So, you know, we had to, well, we didn't have to, but you ethically should pay our employees more. So with increased pay, you know, we tried to, do things to cut down different costs and expenditures. So that kind of offset a few things, but the rising costs of, utilities or rent or taxes or whatever it might be has started eating away at it. So it's great that you can be more efficient, but it's also the problem is you're not getting anything out of it.
Right.
Right. So it's a weird situation that we're in now. And even online sphere, online businesses have gone, like this, it's been a big change in the industry, because now people aren't living on their phones, right?
Yeah.
People are kind of getting tired of social media. They're tired of the old Zuck,
right?
Ruling supreme, and they want to go back and talk to people and socialize. And it's been a big shift and change in advertising and marketing. I'm sure you noticed that too, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So it's not easy like it used to be, where you throw a post up there and you're getting 27 likes, and it's not just your mom and your cousins or whatever, you
got to market it out differently, right? So,
and we've noticed the engagement on stuff has changed a lot. So that was an interesting COVID change.
Yeah,
right.
It's a lot. It was a lot of learning for business people and entrepreneurs, right? Like, and I would venture to say that like I went through an entrepreneur phase. I had like the pizza shop, which I unfortunately had to walk away from, but from there, like I feel like now I'm just a small business owner and I'm fine with that. But in saying that, Alex Russell from Detail Solutions podcast, which is one of my favorite podcasts, but he says all the time he's a lifestyle business owner, right? So he does a lifestyle business, and sometimes like thankfully the people of Brandon, they really took care of me and they pushed me to scale, which is really what I needed. Sometimes like especially with like throughout COVID and stuff, I kind of miss that lifestyle business where it's like you don't have a staff, you're just doing your own thing, you have a detail studio and stuff, which is one of the things you and I have talked about. One in particular side hustle that we've talked about and stuff, which you can talk about if you'd like, but and just kind of how to fill the gaps of like having the side hustle that we're not focusing on 100% outside of our regular business and stuff. And I think that's super important for other business people to understand. Like, if you're in this business and you finally get the freedom, the financial freedom, the time freedom and stuff like that, where now you have staff in place doing what you used to do, like what's the new focus? Like, are you just going to sit around and watch them? Are you just going to work on like ads? Are you just going to work on, the way that your graphic designs, or like what's the plan next? So because like we can't sit and just run on a treadmill. And like, I mean, as a business owner, you kind of have that leverage where you don't have to necessarily be in the trade forever. Like, I went through some health issues where I couldn't really see well. My organs were shutting down. Well, you remember all that.
So that's not good.
Yeah. So I can't really like do necessarily like interior detailing anymore, but I still like to polish and coat and stuff like that. But of course, like now we have staff and like, what am I going to focus on next? Right. So, yeah, I think like side gigs and, you know, having that passive income is very important.
Absolutely. Like the average millionaire has about 7 incomes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting when you talk to a lot of people about, you know, making more income, you know, right away people get really upset, you know, like, oh, I already work 40 hours. I can't work more.
Right.
It's like, well, okay, you don't have to work, you know, 7 times 40
right.
to be a millionaire. You just got to find a way to actually create some leverage in your routines. You know, how can you access this leverage to create an additional cash flow and be intelligent with it?
Right.
So instead of, you know, buying a bigger car and leveling up your lifestyle, you know, Cadillacs, you know,
yeah, that's fair.
Where can you take that money? Where can you invest it appropriately so you're getting a return on your investment?
Right.
Okay. And in Canada, we're lucky because we have a tax-free savings account, which is, you know, like huge.
Yeah, for sure.
Huge. But a lot of people don't access it or use it.
Right. I don't think a lot of people know what they are, and I should actually have somebody on here to discuss that. That's actually good.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that.
Tax-free savings accounts are a big deal, especially when you look at it as a scalable investment over the long term, right? Building your own pension plan, which is a huge deal.
Yeah.
But you know what, we see that all the time with employees or staff or whatever. What happens when they start making some money? They buy something bigger, you buy something nicer.
They adjust their lifestyle, right?
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. So you mentioned, you know, you did your sprint of entrepreneurship. I would argue you're still in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
But you know, with COVID in the last few years, I've really found that, well, okay, what I mean by that is you had loss.
Yep.
You know, you took risk.
Yep.
You know, and you didn't just walk away from it. You're like, you know, this isn't working.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was like nothing to do with what I was doing. It was 100% on the other side.
Exactly. So you have to cut your losses sometimes, right? You know, people laugh at Elon Musk because his rockets keep blowing up. Right. Well, that's not a failure. That's what they wanted to do.
Yeah. Right. They want to see what's going to happen. And
exactly.
Like, I tell people, I actually just discussed this with one of my detailers the other day. I said, you know, the thing is, you can lose something, but you're not restarting. You're starting at a new starting point.
Correct.
Right. So you can. I don't know. I think that somebody said that you have like can't remember. There's X amount of failures before you actually have a success. Right.
Exactly. You know, it was Thomas Edison, you know, how many failures he had before he created the light bulb, right? And urban legend says it was like 10,000 or whatever it might be. And regardless of the fact there was a lot of failures, because that's how it is. Entrepreneurship as a whole is based around a successive amount of failures, and not a successive amount of wins, right? But the perception of how things are in society now is an entrepreneur starts out, has a huge win, then another win, then another win, and another win, but they don't see those failures
in between.
Exactly. And as such, we've glamorized entrepreneurship. You know, and you know, everyone is, you know, like, you know, hashtag entrepreneur dad or mom boss or dad or boss babe or whatever. And if the extent of the risk that you're going to take is putting a hashtag on your social media platform, you can't call yourself really an entrepreneur. You know, if you're not willing to do something, like, what's it cost to start a business online nowadays? Almost nothing. You can set up an affiliate marketing account. I've got like 10 with different companies, and it costs nothing to get an affiliate code, right? And then you put it out there, and you don't get your sale, and maybe your mom supports you, and she's the only one who does. And you kind of go, wow, this just isn't working for me. After a week, I'm just going to walk away. You're not an entrepreneur. Okay? Because you had no skin in the game. You didn't learn any lessons. You didn't fail because you didn't even try. You know, if you're putting one single post out there about your business and then saying, it just didn't work, I give up, you didn't do enough. You know, so I mean, kudos to you for doing something that had very good potential, and then also walking away and cutting your losses before it dragged you down.
For sure. I always laugh at people when they're talking about like MLMs and stuff like that. They're like, oh, it's a pyramid scheme. I'm like, you're looking at the pyramid wrong, though. Lots of people look at a pyramid that sits like this, but when you're looking at that, it's kind of sitting like this. So you're starting from the bottom and you're crawling your way up, which is exactly how business works. Right. So, but what they're doing is they're just basically passing on the experience to you. So you're working on, like, in my opinion, you're working on basically like a commission style base. Right. Which is honestly the way it should be. That's the way I try to run it here as well. And a lot of that came from like another program that I had brought to Brandon, and I passed it on to a friend because I was just not in the headspace for it at the time. But we kind of try to run it similar around here, where we're like trying to make sure that our team, the day they walk in, it's like, hey, I want you to think as if you own this place. So everything you do, you're getting monetized for what you're doing.
For
right?
sure.
So we try to run it that way, but I always laugh when people are like, sounds like a pyramid scheme. And I had that with the other thing I brought here, which was a little different because it was like based on finances and savings and stuff. So it was scary. And I didn't, like, I was broke as hell at the time. I was literally
it's hard to explain people where to invest when you're not investing yourself or whatever, right?
Exactly, So I kind of had to, same thing, pass it off to a friend. I'm like, hey man, like, you're really good at this. I'm not, and I don't feel comfortable talking to people about this at this point. So I kind of left, and then I became really good friends with some people that are in the business, and I'm like, I'll just leave it to you guys. You know what the hell you're doing, right? So,
but you know, there's nothing wrong with starting out from the bottom and, you know, starting a business with something you don't have any skill set in. You know, because, you know, like on one hand, like I said before, like people like to glamorize all this stuff. They want to see the success, right? But really, like,
what's the cost
people
of it?
don't want that. They want to see the failures. They want to see the struggle. They want, you know, like remember grade 9, everyone said show your work. They want you the work to be they want to see how hard it is. Because people can respect that. Everyone hates a person who just gets a home run after a home run. Right? It's like, oh, you lucky bastard, right?
That's the one thing I say now. I'm like, you know, if I could go back to 2018 when I started this, 2017, I wish I video recorded and took more pictures and like had copies of everything, so I could literally like build videos on like, this is what I did or how I got here. Right? So like, that's always hard when you look back and you're like, man, I really wish I could have like actually proved to people I worked in this little 2-car garage. Like I had nothing.
Well, I agree. I completely agree. I wish I did the same thing too, but you're almost embarrassed to do it at that point in time because you're like, oh, I don't want to.
What if I fail?
It's a spotlight effect, you know. You're like, everyone's looking at me, everyone's judging me, and you know, if I take these pictures, they're gonna laugh at me. It's like, no, they don't care, and if they do, they've got bigger issues to deal with. You know, they've got something in there, right? It's a weird thing. Here's if you like pyramid schemes, here you go. You'll like this one. I once had a person in to see me, and they said, so you own this business, you own your clinic, right? And I said, yeah, I do. So everyone that works for you, they like pay you money to be here. And I was like, yeah, I run the facility, I handle the costs, and I pay them accordingly. And she goes, that's a pyramid scheme. I don't like that. I'm not coming back. And I was like, this is a business. She's like, no, that's not how real business works. That's not how it should be. Okay. And, you know, like the number of times I've had similar types of discussions where it's like, yeah, you own the business, but, you know, you shouldn't be making any money. Right? It's like, then why would you do a business? It's not about altruistic behaviors here. This is about being able to keep the lights on and put stuff away for yourself and perpetuate a better community, right? But we have a weird mindset when it comes to.
And then we look at these big stores, you know, the Walmarts, the McDonald's, whatever. And like, they have multiple employees. They're paying them minimum wage, and those people can barely afford to live. But here they are living lavish lives, you know. And here we are, like, okay, the business is yours. You're just going to rent this space off me, just as I rent this building off Ryan. And you're gonna pay me rent, and then whatever you choose to make. If you want to work 12 hours a day, that's your choice. If you want to work 3 hours a day, that's your choice. But remember that, like, contradicts your income.
That's going to reflect what you bring in.
That's crazy.
But that's how people are with their own personal insecurities when it comes to finances and money and everything, right? And I like to think you really, as a business owner, you have the responsibility to make as much money as humanly possible.
For sure.
Right? Because if you make too much money, what are you going to do with it? You're going to give it away, charitable contributions, or you can make donations, you can perpetuate your business, you can bring in more people, create more jobs. You know, if you're only living on the break-even point, that's the most selfish place to be because you're only looking after yourself.
Right, because you're only looking after the time that you're willing to dedicate into your business, or your time, to your job, or whatever the case. Yeah, that's fair. So,
I mean, you say that, and people don't like hearing that, and people get triggered pretty quick.
They'll think about it.
Sometimes they do, anyways. So it's a funny world, though, right?
Right.
So
you have kids as well, like you have a family, right?
So I've got a 24-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 8-year-old.
Okay.
So it's interesting.
Right. Yeah, that's busy life. So
it's busy.
Yeah.
But
so how do you mitigate taking a risk into something else when you have, like, when you're thinking about that aspect? Like, how do you mitigate that? I know for me that was a really tough thing.
Got to lean back on that one,
right? So, like, for me, I have 2 kids. with 2 moms, and then I have like an older stepdaughter, and then my youngest is with my current fiance. So for me, like when I looked into the Fast Fire deal, it almost seemed too good to be true, but it almost seemed fair.
Yep.
So when I looked into it, unfortunately, I should have slowed it down. I didn't. But like when I looked at that, I'm like, okay, what does this bring? And I'm a very real life parent. So I'm like, okay, so here's an opportunity where, you know, Aaliyah can have her first job. Here's an opportunity where eventually Jasper and Ari can have their first jobs because they're both the same, like close to the same age. But what can I teach them in the meantime if I can keep both places going? And then how do I look at that? And then same with my nephews, right? So I'm like, okay, well, here's the real life choice. So like for me, it wasn't a risk of if I go into this, I'm going to fail. It was more of a risk of how can I teach my kids and my nephews, like, sometimes this is just how things go. And, you know, like, so how do you mitigate like taking that? Like, I know
that's hard. I
know year one isn't like a huge investment. It's not like you went in and you invested 100,000, $1 million or whatever. Like it was fairly low.
Not yet.
Right. Exactly. Not yet. But like you've had the opportunity where you could invest minimal essentially to gain maximum. So like, depending how hard you want to work on it. Right. So
that's the thing. There's always like, when it comes to that sort of like initials, like making the decision, I like to think there's 3 currencies in life. You got your time, your energy, your money.
Right.
Right. And so you need to balance out those things. And it's really hard to balance it out because none of those things really tend to cooperate very well.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, like we look at time as, you know, quantity. You know, we look at energy as in being busy, and we look at money as cash. Right. Right.
Yep.
But until you kind of change the perspective and switch it from for time, looking at as quality time, right?
Yep.
Energy, looking at being productive, and money, you look at cash flow, you know, automated.
Yep.
You know, then you can have some actual harmony and balance. And I think that's one of the biggest things I try to look at. You know, is how could I change the perspectives into that and kind of showcase it to the kids that it's not about spending more time at work.
Yeah.
You know, it's about how can I be efficient with a lot of these things.
Yep.
And the other thing that I really try to look at is, you know, what can I find for mentorship or a peer community?
Yeah.
You know, who can I talk to? And I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people make is, you know, entrepreneurship is a perception of a lonely game.
Yes, it is. Yep.
You know, very much a lonely game, but it isn't if you do it with people. You know,
right.
You know, they say it's lonely at the top, and if it is, you're doing it wrong, right?
Yeah, right.
You need to have those mentorship communities, you know, people you can talk to and explain things and kind of, you know, rely on other people's expertise, right? And that's really the big thing. So when it comes to having a family, it's like, oh, you got to lean on professionals that you trust even more,
right? And
say, hey, you know, like, what are the risks and the rewards and the time investments, you know, the energy investment, the money investment,
right?
And move forward from that. And then you always realize it's going to be a lot more costly than you think, right?
Well, then you get into it and you start realizing, like, and that's kind of the point to where I kind of want to go with this podcast, is understanding that, like, a mentor doesn't have to be from your sector. I always find that, like, in the detail community, maybe it's the same in the communities you're part of, but in the detail community, they're always trying to reach out to, like, higher end detailers. Like, how did you do this? How did you do that? And, like, nobody really wants to give their secret sauce away, right?
Right.
But at the end of the day, like, I've met with yourself multiple times. We've had multiple conversations about this. Like, Charlie's a great aspect. Mark from, like, I have lots of people that I can talk to, and I'm like, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? What do you think of this? And they're all from different sectors. One's building houses. One's, you know, a healthcare worker. One is like a retired entrepreneur who's built multiple businesses. I'm like, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? And the grand scheme of it all is like, how can I take a little bit of what Ja-On said, a little bit of what this guy said, and a little bit of what this guy says, and then, like, how can I put that into my detailing company? And I think, like, a lot of the time, if people would open up their horizons, that there's other aspects, right, that we can look into. And a lot of the businesses, no matter what you're doing, they all kind of funnel into the same general aspect. You're looking for clients, you're looking for customers, you're looking for people, and you want people to believe in you when you get there, right?
100%.
So, yeah, I think that's super important for people to understand.
I don't think people fully understand that. They just think about what's in it for me, you know, how can I make the quick, easy bucks, as opposed to what is the long-term game, the relationship, the growth, you know, like, what can you eventually teach someone else? You know, like, that's, I agree. That's really what it comes down to, especially when you have kids and such. You know, how can all those things, how can I take all that skill, that knowledge that I'm going to accumulate for the next 20 years and, you know, grabbing this and this from different people, different professionals, and distill it down into something that I can
that we can work
pass down, right?
Yeah.
And then create a legacy from that point in time, right?
Yeah.
So
this past week,
easy.
Yeah, this past week has been really tough. Like I said, I'm a very real parent. I'm very like, this is the point. This is real life. Like, you learn in school to learn school.
Yeah.
You come home to learn real life. And like, that's how I try to explain it to my kids. And like, this last week was really hard. Cheryl and I, our oldest daughter, has been, butting heads with some kids at school and stuff. So we've been working on that and stuff. And I said, like, I would almost like to do like an anti-bully campaign, or like at least go and talk to them in an assembly style. Because the thing is, you can take the most popular kids, some of the ones that I went to high school with, and they're working flipping French fries and burgers.
Yep.
And then you look at like a kid like myself, I got bugged a lot when I was younger because I was, my mom was a single mom. She didn't have a lot of money. She was raising kids. And, I got bugged a lot. But now, like, I have a business. I have kids. And, like, some of these people, like, so I'm like, you never know where someone's going to be. And I'm like, you guys are all sitting here. Like, some of you guys are sitting here and you're bullying Aaliyah because she's leads with a big heart. Yeah. And so she becomes an easy target because they can be mean to her this week, and next week they can use her as a friend when their friends are being mean.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing with bullying, it's a deflection.
Exactly.
Something else.
Right. So I said to her, you know what? I wouldn't worry about it, because at the end of the day, I said, I'm hopeful. Like, she's entering high school and she's trying to take business course, graphic science course. Like,
how old is she?
She's 14. So she just turned 14. So I'm like, these are all things that hopefully we can bring into this business. And one day this might be yours. Yeah. So like, those people might need jobs, or their kids might need their first job. And like, I've had lots of people reach out. Can you do can you be my kid's first job? And I'm like, I always try to help where I can, but I'm like, some of these people, I'm like, you were such a fucking dick in school. Why the fuck would I help you? But I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I will help your kid. Yeah. You don't have a job where you can help your kid, I'll help your kid.
And sometimes people change and grow.
And you know what? Some of them, like some kids that bullied me really bad, I talked to on a regular basis. We actually became friends. We talked about it. We moved past it, and it's all great, right? I mean, I had to change a lot too. I was prone to be, I was not a good person back then, and now I try to be better, and that's why I try to help people in the business sector and stuff, because often in business, you get bullied a lot.
Yeah.
People beat the hell out of you.
They really do. It's actually amazing how brave people are behind a keyboard. Yeah. And how much people will really take offense at anything, which has nothing to do with your business at all. It just happened to be you were the one that poked a button or something like that triggered some sort of reaction.
Or people just don't like where you are. Like, we had a huge rumor when I first started this. Well, he does this. Yeah. I'm like, oh, here we go. Yeah. And it was bad, right? But like, I mean, I just, whatever. You all see exactly what I'm producing every day. These pictures aren't fake. They're real pictures in my shop. So like, here's the truth. And now, like, a lot of those have gone away, and we've done very well with that and stuff. And like, but the person I was, the person I am, are two different people, which a lot of the time, in school, the person you were in school to the person you are today are two totally different things. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Like, it's interesting that in high school, we put so much of a big emphasis on high school as this huge part of your life. Mm-hmm. But when it comes down to it, it doesn't even matter a bit.
Yeah, I guess, right?
Like, not even at all. I remember talking to this girl I went to school with, and we were, didn't know each other at all. And she was like, yeah, I didn't really know you in school. You were a part of the cool group.
Right.
And I was like, no, most definitely not. But you were. She's like, oh, no, it most definitely wasn't. Yeah. So as a result of that, we found out that neither one of us was particularly in the cool group. Right. You guys thought each other were. Yep. Doesn't really matter, but it was the perceptions and the realities are entirely different. Yeah. When you're going through that uneducated mindset, like, God, when you're 15 or 16, you're lucky you can put your pants on the right way, let alone really decide what a person thinks of you.
Right. Yeah. And that's what I told Aaliyah. I'm like, going into high school is cool. Like, I'm excited for you because you get to, it's different now. Like, we used to have preteen dances at the different community centers, and they don't have that stuff anymore. And I'm like, you get to meet kids from other schools. You get to make different friends. You get to find the clique, right? Like, there's cliques in high school. So you get to find the clique in which you vibe with. Yeah. Surprisingly enough, I never fit in with the jocks, but I was friends with them. I never fit in with the school people, like the nerds and stuff, right? Nerds, because I wasn't that person. Lo and behold, I guess my biggest thing was I was trying to be like the you know, the class clown. So I never got to be that person. But in looking back, you know, Cheryl always says like, "You're really smart." I'm like, I never thought I was in school, but like I was more concerned about making people laugh and sticking up for myself and stuff, right? So
I mean, that's school's a funny thing, you know. Like I remember when I was in one class, I was put into that class because the counselor said it'd be easier to go into this one. You don't need to work too hard if you don't need to.
Yeah.
Okay, sure, I'll do it.
Enough, yeah.
So I got put in with a bunch of, you know, people who just didn't really care about the program or the course or whatever. So it was actually the hardest I ever had to work.
Right.
Okay? Because if you got a mark that was too high, you get ridiculed and you get harassed or whatever.
Yeah.
You get a mark too low, your GPA suffers.
Yeah.
So I've never had to work so hard to keep my mark a consistent, you know, 70% just to fly under the radar.
Right.
It was the worst thing ever.
It's hard, right?
It's like you driving a car and doing the speed limit.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's very hard,
You know, yeah, driving slower is easy. You just take your foot off the gas. You know, going all out is easy too. Just slam it down. But doing 50 is hard.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, for sure. And that's the one thing we like, I don't know, like I said, we try to lead by example in our house. So like when we were taking risks and stuff, and I mean, 2022 was not like, that was a huge learning year for me.
Yeah.
I learned a lot of lessons in 2022, but you know, eventually I'd like to get into different things and whatever for my kids in the future. But for right now, I'm like kind of pulling back and descaling, and I'm like, hey,
regroup.
Yeah, regroup, and like, what did I learn from this? You know, so
the one thing I've learned consistently over 20 years is I don't take big enough risks. Right.
Yeah.
And even that, like, or go into enough, like, don't make the bigger purchases or the bigger buy-ins or anything like that. So that's something that I try to work with. But a lot of it is as you start your own business, you know, everyone's saying, you know, don't do that. That's stupid. You're going to fail. Right.
Yeah.
And it kind of became a little bit of a joke for me. Right. So I tell people what I was going to do, and they'd be like, no, it's a bad idea. You're going to fail. Nobody wants it.
All the time. Yeah.
I'm going to do it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And if somebody said, that's perfect, that's exactly what you should do, it's always been like, oh,
wait a minute,
not risky enough, eh?
Yeah.
Not risky. I've got to be bigger.
The same thing. Starting a detail shop, people are going to clean cars. I'm like, yeah, someone's got it.
It's a dirty job.
That's like a job for kids. Cutting grass is a job for kids.
Yeah.
I'm like, no,
tell that to some
somebody's got to be a professional in that aspect, though, right?
Yeah.
Someone's got to be a professional in that trade.
Yeah.
So let's do it. And now, like, there's a whole group of us, like bigger detailers that are like, hey, how can we make this more of a trade?
Yeah.
Right. Like, how can we make sure that people are learning this moving forward? Because it is a low entry business for sure. But if you want to be one of the elites, you're going to have to buy some product. And
you got to go all in.
Yeah, exactly. You got to go all in, and you got to figure it out. So,
you know, that's the same with our business too. You know, when I opened my clinic, people, you know, some other therapists said, you know, that's stupid. You're an idiot. You know, don't you get it? Massage therapy is so oversaturated. You'll never survive.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we have more staff in our clinic than there used to be therapists when I got started. Like, it's unreal.
Yeah.
But people get stuck in that box.
Yeah.
Right? Nice comfy box.
Yeah.
And then something bad happens or trauma happens and the box gets a little smaller.
A little tighter.
Right?
And
A little tighter. And eventually you get to the point where it's like, I've got to push back or just try to get more comfortable.
You got to bust that wall down at some point, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, good for you for kind of saying, screw y'all.
Yeah. Yeah. And like when we came into it, there was like, I mean, every dealership called it detailing, but I mean, it was like reconditioning cars to go back on the lot. They were like for sure half-ass, right? Which is fair. They're selling a car. They're not selling a service, right? Yeah. One of the biggest dealerships here. I've known him since I was a kid, and I'm like talking to him about it, and I'm like, just so you know, like I don't want to compete with you. Like obviously you'd eat me up every day of the week, but this is what I'm doing. And he's like, we're in the business of selling cars.
Yeah.
But they have to be clean first. We're not in the business of detailing and
beautifying cars,
protecting.
Right? Yeah.
Like, in fact, we offer the protection because that's what our clients need.
Yep.
And we offer the washes because that's what our clients need and they're asking for. But at the end of the day, like, we're in the business of selling cars. The sooner those cars come back and we get to sell a new one, that's the business we're in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's fair.
Yep.
He's like, but you're going to be in the business of making sure people stay in those vehicles. Yep. So we're not going to be competing, but we are going to be working together to move forward. Yep. So I'm like, okay, you know what? That's awesome. So
that's good. That's really good. You got to know where you stand.
Yeah.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
How do you get more customers? I mean, small business always likes to say best form of advertising is word of mouth, and I think that's bullshit.
Yeah, like I see that on detail forums all the time. It's like, how do you advertise? Oh, word of mouth. I'm like,
That's a lazy answer.
well, how the fuck did you get there in the first place?
Yeah.
Like, how did you get your taste in someone else's mouth in order for them to go tell somebody else that you taste like shit?
Yeah.
Or you taste great.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, so I'm like, okay, my biggest form that I always tell people is networking.
Yeah.
And I see you post all the time, your network is your net worth.
Yep.
And like, you know, Weed City Networking's been huge for me. Brandon Chambers been absolutely extraordinary for me. But like, I'll even go to Walmart.
Yeah.
And like, here's a huge tactic I almost hate talking about in public, but I'm going to say it. I'll go specifically into the chip aisle because you always know that chips are like terrible mess, right?
Of course.
People are digging through them and being assholes. I'll go into the chip aisle. It'll be like 9 o'clock at night, and I'll dig through the chips like this, right? And I'm like, oh man, you know, I really wish like staff of Walmart would like clean this a little better. You know, I own a local detail shop, and I'm here at 9 o'clock at night grocery shopping. Like, I don't have time to be sorting through chips my wife wants to use, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And then people are like, oh, what detail shop do you own? And you're like, boom, Resurrection. And they're like, oh, cool. And then you'll walk away. You'll just grab like a random bag of chips that you're like, whatever, fuck, we'll eat these this week. Then I'll be like a couple aisles down, and all of a sudden you can see them kind of doing the old like, and then they come up and they're like, you got a card? Like, we actually need our vehicle detail.
That's whole guerrilla marketing techniques. That's one step above leaving your card on the urinal. You know?
Yeah, and we see that all the time. Like, people are like, oh, we should put cards under wiper blades. I'm like, terrible idea.
Yeah.
But why is that? I'm like, you're physically supposed to be working on that vehicle, and then you're going to go and touch their vehicle to put a card underneath there. There's two things that can happen. One, they'll phone you and be like, hey, seen your card. Yeah. But then where does that lead? You scratched my car. Are you saying my car's dirty?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you saying my headlights aren't good enough? Are you saying this? And as much as you want to be like, yeah, your car's fucking filthy mess. Well, you can't. Yeah. Right. So like, that'd be like you walking up to somebody in Walmart and, you know, they're walking like this and you're like, hey, by the way, I can correct you. Or, you know, you see dry hands and it's like, by the way, I sell hand lotion. And it's like, oh, fuck.
Man, people hate unsolicited advice.
They hate it.
If you wanted an example of proof on that, just go to a gym and tell someone they're working out wrong.
Oh man,
like, they'll hit you. You know? It's crazy. So yeah, that's networking.
Yep, networking. That's
and
that's my favorite. I love chatting with people, and my biggest thing is like stories, man. Like, a lot of the time, you know, you listen to like different promoters. I don't want to say any names, but these different moguls that promote and stuff, and they're like, your backstory is everything, and I'm like, don't sell a bullshit story.
No,
if you
yeah.
You know, so many people around here are like, oh, it must be nice to be silver spoon fed about other people in the city. And I'm like, I wish I was. Yeah. I wish I was, because if I had that, think of how much further ahead I'd be. But I literally had to start from the very bottom of like in the gutter, in the trenches. Yep. And now look where I am. And it was a lot of work. But like, if I was silver spoon fed, and like, you know what, at the end of the day, what are we really doing this for? We're not doing it to take a whole bunch of money to the grave with us like a bunch of pirates. We're doing this so our kids can be silver spoon fed and they can have an advantage, right? So
that's the thing. You know, there's so much talk about the unfair advantage or you're privileged or, you know, whatever it might be. It's like, why is that a negative? Right? Why are we supposed to be like, oh yeah, you know, like I just came from this amazing situation, you know, shame on me. Yeah. It's like, yeah, you know, you should really recognize the fact that you've had things given to you. You have these unfair advantages.
You should be thankful for it.
Be thankful for it. Use them. Yeah. And give someone else a hand up, as opposed to, I'll hold back. You know, you're right. You know, like I came from a good situation and I should be ashamed of myself. Yeah. No, really, it should be like, okay, now that makes you a leader potentially. Yeah. You know, it gives you the better ability to lift someone else up. Right.
Yeah. And like I was chatting with my counselor a while ago, and this is something I said on, it was like a different podcast. What I said, like when I won that Brandon Chamber Outstanding New Business Award, it was really hard for me. We won it in, I think it was March. I think it was. Yeah. And I don't think I took that award to work till September. Okay. Actually, really, like that fucked me up really bad because I was like, I don't deserve to be here.
Well, you know, that's a sign that you need more acclaim.
Right? So then I went and I actually started seeing a counselor. Like, that's how much that award fucked me up. Yeah. I still to this day don't know why. I just didn't feel like I deserved it, right? Because like I grew up in this and like I'm in this and like I don't feel like I belong in here anymore. Yeah. So, but I'm getting better. But I went to my counselor and she's like, what do you really want to do? I'm like, you know what? My grandmother was Indigenous and she was really big on that. And obviously me being Métis, I'm like, I want to help Métis people build business and start entrepreneurship and understand that like, just because you're in this mold doesn't mean you have to stay in that mold. You can break out of a mold. That's what makes things so great. Chocolate always used to be square. Well, guess what? We have chocolate balls. We have chocolate this. We have chocolate that. We have chocolate in the shape of dicks. Like, it's whatever, you know, like the mold doesn't have to stay the mold. You break out of that mold and you start doing things, right? Like, I think at the end of everything, if everything goes the way I'm hoping it goes, then like I would like to be like a public speaker for Métis and Indigenous people of anything, right? Like, just how do we all become better? And like, I know you have a different ethnic background and stuff like that, and like that's big on you as well, right? Like you fit that mold, and you try to, like, you broke out of a mold and you're trying to get into somewhere else, right?
So, absolutely. There's always those struggles that you get. Sometimes those unfair advantages are there. You don't know them. You see them as a disadvantage for a long time.
Right. Yeah. And that's, like for a long time I didn't tell anyone I was Métis because I'm like, oh, I don't want people to look down on me. But like, I got to the point where I'm like, you know what? Like, if somebody's going to stand up and say like, I'm Métis, that's what I want to do, right? So
the only way to start a movement is by one person standing up, right? Yeah. So it's stepping up or stepping out, one of the two, right? Yeah. So maybe it's you or maybe it isn't.
Right. Yeah. And that's, you know, Cheryl being Indigenous too, and being a very, very good hairdresser and having like a good reputation around town and stuff like that. That's been huge for her too. Yeah. So, and then of course they have different views and beliefs and stuff like that on when you cut hair, what you do with it. And like, of course, you know, they have a different belief system on it. So
it's not a bad thing either. So it's nice that if you do everything that everyone else does, how the hell do you stand out anyways, right?
Exactly. You know, my kids like that show Trolls World Tour. Yeah. It's like really stupid. Have you seen it?
No. God,
it's like, but the one part in it is like, I can't remember. I think it's Poppy, and she's like, no, it was like a different troll character, but he's like, if we all look the same, how do people know we're different? Yeah. And like, I sat there with all my kids and I'm like, that's it. Yeah. That's the one. Yeah. That's what you guys need to understand. If we're all the same, how do we ever stand out?
Such is the problem with inclusivity, exclusivity, right? Yeah. And sometimes like people go detail their car or whatever, they buy a certain vehicle or they do whatever. Sometimes, most of the time, it's for, you know, prestige. It's social proof. It's being like, I'm able to do this. I'm able to do that. You know, some people are not able to. So I like doing these things. Right. You know, like I don't like buying clothes in Brandon because you just look like everyone else.
That's fair.
Right. Yeah. Or if I do buy stuff, I'll buy it like smaller, like men's boutiques or something. Right. Because then, you know, it's going to be much more unique. Right. Right. Nothing more annoying than looking exactly like someone else
like everyone
down the street. Right.
Yeah, like, for sure. So tell us about your book coming up. That'd be a great one.
Well, that was fun. Yeah. That was literally a thing that I did flying back from a trip when I went to Halifax a year and a half ago.
Right. I remember that trip actually.
And I was just like, I'm bored flying back. Right. So I just started drafting out what was going to be lead generation, just something to capture people's attention so they can start following me and everything. Right. Give it away. And as you start doing it, you start realizing like, oh, this is really big. You know,
something's happening here.
Right. There's a lot of stuff here. Right. So I started fleshing it out and then it was done. You know, it took very, very quick. It's not a very big book. You know, it's about 70 pages. Okay. Which is a quick, easy read. You can get through it in a weekend. And it's really showing you like how to really create wealth from a very small budget perspective. Okay. So it's, you know, you always start with your story, your why story, you know, what you're doing, why you're doing it, what's the point of it all. Yep. And then it's creating leverage, right? Which every business owner knows, right? Right. Got a lot of social media, like entrepreneurs and stuff. They're like, no, you don't do that stuff. I'll do it myself. Right. I'll figure it out my way. Yeah. Right. Right. And then at that point in time, you start, you just start building from there. You start accessing different components of investments, of growth as a whole. So, you know, how are you going to create this money? You know, do you want to have a big store? Right. Yeah. Like, I can't think of what your overhead is here. And, you know, just to keep the lights open. You know, like my store's thousands of dollars. Well, don't do it. You know, don't do it. You know, same thing with inventory. You know, like why you can have all this inventory that's literally melting because you're paying percentage on your line of credit or whatever it is, right? It's just melting away your profits. Well, what if you just didn't have to do it? what if you could do it all virtually? I mean, you've got Amazon on demand, or what's that? The Amazon fulfillment by Amazon.
Okay,
You've got
right,
affiliate
yeah.
marketing, you've got direct sales. There's all these aspects that you could be doing. You could be doing, digital production. You can create courses. You can write books.
Right.
You can do podcasts. You can do mini courses or mentoring. All these things that you can do if you get the word out there,
Yeah.
right? And then from there, what do you do with the money? Because most people would be like, "Oh, I'm just gonna spend it, and throw it away and waste it accordingly." And like the number of times I've had people say, "Oh, $200, that's nothing. You can't retire on $200. You can't quit working in $200.
Got to start somewhere.
Give it 30 years.
Yeah.
Invested at 8%. It's got a lot of money,
Yeah, for sure.
So when you start throwing those numbers at people very specifically and say, "Hey, this is what you can do with a small amount of money, just given a long enough time," you're going to go a long ways. And again, with the tax-free savings account, tax-free growth.
Yeah.
So 8%,
Huge.
25 years, people go, "Well, that's not a lot." It's like, it's tax-free too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you're not paying. Yeah.
So no tax on that. And that's huge.
So when's your book supposed to come out?
I don't know.
You don't know yet?
Okay. It's one
That's
of those,
fair.
perfectionism is procrastination, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out, how, it's always one thing after another. So it's done.
Right.
It's all completely done.
Right.
And it's like, well, is it best to print it or is it best to put it on Amazon? Well, Amazon's just going to be the easiest,
Right.
because again,
You can do both.
You can do both,
Yeah.
right? And if you do it on demand, it's much easier, right? Otherwise, you're breaking one of the functional rules I talked about, is virtual product distribution.
Yep.
If I'm buying 1,000 of these books and having them sitting around, what's the point of writing a book about it? So do it digital would be the best way to do it. And then how do you get the notice? How do you get the attention drawn to it? How do you get people looking at it? And that's the game.
Yeah.
That's
Well, we'll have to chat sometime too about like editors and stuff like that, because I've been over the last 5 years been writing a book about kind of the struggles that I went through being a dad and like going through separation, custody battles. Like I used to be a huge proclaimer for the father's rights movement.
Yep.
Until I sat down one day and I'm like, I don't really give a shit about me.
Yeah.
But like, how do we make sure our kids are getting what they deserve?
That's
Because sometimes, it can be father's rights movement, but then you have really shitty dads that really, like, those kids are never better off without them, but like maybe they're not a safe escape for them,
Totally. Yeah.
So I'm like, hey, you know what? No more father's rights movement. I still follow the groups. I comment in them, but it's more towards like kids' rights.
Yeah.
And what do the children deserve? Because children do deserve both loving and caring parents that can provide for them or can't provide for them. So I've been writing that book, and that's it's going to be a while, but like I do want to get it going
just get it done. Otherwise, you're doing what I'm doing. But you're right. With a lot of the groups, people put the story of they lost their kids, and it's always a sob story. It's always one-sided.
It's always one-sided, yeah.
Right?
Very.
So they spin the story however they want,
Mhm.
right? And then get a lot of people supporting. You got to do this, you got to do this, and sometimes it's terrible information.
Very.
It can be very combustible.
Yeah. That's what I say all the time. I see dads commenting, "Oh, I haven't seen my kid for this long," and I see moms commenting, "Well, the dad's a deadbeat," and then I'm like, "Hey."
Yeah.
Then it's like it always becomes a spiral. Okay, well, you're not in your kids' lives, so why?
Yeah.
Well, I was an alcoholic, or I beat up their mom one night, or I left for 2 years and then decided to come back
and didn't come back.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I went for milk, never showed up again. But it's like, kind of your own fault. You got to earn that again.
Exactly.
And then I see moms. I'm like, okay, well, dad's a deadbeat. I'm like, well, why is dad a deadbeat? Well, they don't want to pay child support. I'm like, okay, well, why don't they pay child support? Well, because they can't afford it. I'm like, okay, so don't you think time is more valuable than money?
Yeah.
Or it's dad did this, and it's like a conflict. Yeah. It's the exact same story the dad said. I'm like, that's fair, man. Guess what? Now you have to climb back that time, because you're not earning the trust of the mom.
No.
You have to earn the trust of the child, where the child wants to be with you, because that's an argument. And I mean, I can go on about that fucking all day. You've had yours, right? You've been through it as well.
There's always those struggles, and the big thing is kids are devious little sneakers too. They know how to manipulate.
They know how to manipulate, but they're also very smart. Yeah, and they'll tell you what they want.
They're also very sad in those situations.
They are, and kids need the different parent. At different times. There's times where my daughter Aria will phone, and I'm like, video call from Aria. I'm like, hey babe, what's up? I just needed to say hi. I'm like, okay, She's like, I'm just getting ready for school. I just needed to say hello. I'm like, okay, are you excited for school? No. I'm like, okay, what are you nervous about? And that's what we talk about. Aaliyah, my oldest, for example, like she has myself, she has her mom, she has her biological dad, and then her biological dad has a partner as well. And sometimes, you know, it's like, who are you messaging? And she's like, you know, drawing a blank on his girlfriend's name, but she'll be like, oh, Caitlin. I'm like, cool. Like, what are you guys talking about? Well, I just, you know, I needed some advice. Perfect. Great. You have an outlet. And the more people that can love our kids, the better off they are. You know, and I absolutely hate, I went through a little phase with my son. His mom's probably going to get mad if she ever watches this, but that's fine because it's the truth. But I'm like, you know, Jasper's like, Daddy, I really missed you on this day. I'm like, okay, well, you can phone me anytime. Mom says she doesn't have your number. I'm like, that's terrible. But then I tell him, you know what? Don't worry about it. Anything you think about, just think about for next time and bring that home and we'll discuss and we'll talk about it. And so my dad ended up getting, it's like a little smartwatch. But you know, I sing all my kids a bedtime song every night. So I sang the song into there. So now he listens to it. His mom did the same, sang a song and I sing my song and then I'm like, hey, play your mom's song and then you can have a good night's sleep. He said, okay. You know, I try to be fair no matter how I look at it, right? Like I never try to be contradicting of like, no, you can't listen to your mom's song, fucking delete it. Like, you know, so I'm trying to write a book on how to mitigate thinking of your children first, because I think that's a huge thing. A lot of people, when they do reach out and they're like, hey man, I'm dealing with this. My ex does this. I'm like, hey, anytime you say anything, the biggest thought I want you to think about is like, in the best interest of our children. And think about that first, because a lot of people forget that they're constantly making choices for their kids, forgetting that like if they listen carefully, their kids will tell them exactly what they need.
Very much so.
And it's the same with business. If you listen to what the market is telling you, the market will tell you exactly what you need to do. And that's how I scaled mine. It was never me being like, I want a bigger building. I want a bigger building. I want a bigger building. It was like, okay, I need this because the customers we're booking 2, 3, 4 weeks out. We're booking this out. We're now customers are asking for a higher end ceramic coating. Customers are asking for window tint. How do we get that? And then that's how we kind of filled into where we are now. It was never, I want. It was like, we have to make these in order to keep our clients.
Grow with it.
Right. So
that's a win. That's success, right? And
that's where, I don't know, competitors or people in the same, I hate saying competitors, but people in the same market as us, you know, and sit there and sometimes it's like people try to create these fake dramas between us. And I'm like, I welcome you guys to do it because you guys are also helping build a community or a network or, you know, a market in town. Well, so
number one doesn't talk about number two.
Right. Unless you're pooping. Sometimes number one talks about number two. That's true. Good stuff. But that's awesome, man. And like you said, no one wins in a race to the bottom unless you're fucking falling.
Exactly.
You don't want to be falling. I appreciate your time. Where can people find you?
I guess you can go to my website, actually. It's JaonHillman.com. Perfect. That'll be the easiest place.
I'll make sure that there's a catch on the bottom, but what's your Facebook?
That's Ja-On Hillman. Same, right across the board.
Anywhere you need him, Ja-On Hillman. And you will learn a lot from him if you listen carefully because he's very, very knowledgeable. Probably one of the smartest people I know.
Hey, when you make as many mistakes as me, you learn a few things.
And after saying that, we have an overhead door when you leave, so your big head can go out.
Excellent. Might need it.
I appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much for coming. I think that was a great conversation. So
perfect. Thanks for having me.
See everybody next Thursday. Thank you for tuning in.